Hey, this is Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP-TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all those massive and gigantic and ginormous tomahawk cut and cowboy cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had. Likely will be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for UppercutChops.com. All right, a big welcome in everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast. Everybody also watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, Wild Charter, and independent cable affiliates in select markets. Thanks for joining us there, as well as in Hotel TV. That's Hotel TV in all Nielsen rated markets when and where applicable, as well as all streamers as well. All right, listen, folks. Before we get started with today's show, I want to make sure that we get this out there from our friends over at Vacation Buddies, because they are giving away a couple of nights right here in Las Vegas, or in Orlando, Florida, or in Branson, Missouri, if you can answer this simple trivia question. Which of these three structures is the tallest in Las Vegas? Is it A, the Eiffel Tower at the Paris Hotel and Casino, B, the Fontainebleau Hotel and Casino right across from Circus Circus, or C, the Stratosphere Tower at the Strat? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with this station, but they want to give you a couple of nights right here in Las Vegas, Orlando, or Branson, Missouri. If you know the answer to that very, very simple trivia question, again, 888-576-5777. If you know the answer, call now. All righty. All right, so hey, listen. A lot of things to talk about. We're going to stay with baseball today. And the reason we're going to do that is because there are a lot of misnomers about baseball when it comes to today's game versus yesteryear's game. And you say, oh, well, geez, why are you going through that? I'm going to tell you why I'm going through that. Because the game, I don't care whether it's January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. They're all baseball months. And in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the baseball months that are out there, being all of them, analytics don't take a break. Right? Everybody's so hung up on analytics and sabermetrics and all this other garbage. Well, I'll tell you what. When we look at it, we say, what are we really looking for? Now, let's focus on the pitching side of this for a minute, because actually we're going to stick with that for a little while, because the pitching side of this is really what we're after today. Think about this. The pitching side of things is so important because it dictates what is going to happen. What is the batter going to see? What is the tone of the game going to be? Is it going to be inside, outside kind of game? Is it going to be let's pitch to the hitter's strength, let's go right after him, or are we going to stay away from them and play a cowardly game of baseball? And see, honestly, that is just as important as everything else in baseball. Why? It's real simple. Because the game itself has very particular metrics. And if you look at one indicator And that indicator is the complete game. You say, well, wait a minute. What is the deal with the complete game? Why don't we see these anymore? That's the question we should be asking, right? Why is it that we don't see complete games? What in the world is going on in the baseball world? Because me personally, as a former pitcher, what I want to see are what? I want to see complete games. So the idea with this, folks, is we look at complete games in a very different way from our side of the ledger, because pitching and complete games is kind of a big deal. And you have to look at this first. If your pitcher is going deep into games, first of all, it says a lot that's going on with the pitcher because, number one, the coaching staff actually has confidence in the pitcher. And secondly, the coaching staff actually has confidence in the pitcher in the first place. I say that because nowadays, in today's time, we see pitchers are pulled out. Well, they're facing a little adversity. We better get them out of there and let somebody else get in there. And so let's not only have one person out there, let's have a second, let's have a third pitcher, let's have a fourth. Before you know it, there's 9 pitchers in a game. And now you have 9 times the possibility of something bad going with one particular position. And that, frankly, in my opinion, is not the way to do it. So if a pitcher is facing a little bit of issue, maybe they're getting out of jams in maybe the second inning, in the third inning, maybe the fifth inning, and you say, well, you know what, you've had enough. It's 5 1/3, 5 2/3. We've already basically qualified you to get a W in the first place. There, little Billy, and let's go ahead and get you out of the game. Now, pitchers get stronger historically when they have the opportunity to get out of jams and get through adversity and said, oh, well, you got a runner in scoring position. Let's go ahead and get you out of the game. That kind of garbage. So we look at the complete games, the historical decline of complete games, and it's a real head scratcher. I mean, look, the number of Major League Baseball complete games has drastically declined over time, with 2024 having the fewest in history at just 28 compared to 1,089 50 years previous. That's right, 1,000, almost 1,100 complete games versus 28. And of course, this trend is due to factors like the rise of the relief pitcher, which is a bunch of garbage in the first place. I mean, look, you're as strong as the starting rotation. People say, well, why are the Seattle Mariners so good? Well, look, it's not the fact that the Seattle Mariners can hit the baseball. We already know that. But the reality is, those guys can do what? They can pitch the ball. Their starting rotation is the best in Major League Baseball. Obviously, their supporting cast is very good as well. Their long relief, short relief, whatever. But your team will go as far as your starting rotation will take you. Yes, you've got to have a good back end as well. Whereas the LA Dodgers don't have a good back end on their pitching staff. So once you get out of starting rotation, those guys are in a little bit of trouble. But let's stick with the Seattle Mariners. With their starting rotation, you wonder, how come they don't have more complete games? Well, look, people say, well, there is the rise of the relief pitcher, the introduction of the designated hitter. Well, let's face it, since Seattle's been playing, when they came into the league, there's always been a designated hitter. All right? And let's face it, all the way back into the 1970s, what do we have? When the Seattle Mariners came out, they were what? A team in the American League that had the designated hitter. So the junior circuit had that, whereas the senior circuit, the pitchers hit all the way up until just recently. And so they say, being the powers that be, they say, well, the general specialization of roles in modern baseball, which has led to fewer innings pitched per game, which I think is complete nonsense. I mean, think about this. 1974, there was 1,089 complete games. Very honorable time. Me personally, as a kid growing up, this is what I was watching, and this is how we as kids on the playground viewed ourselves. We didn't want to be taken out of the game. We wanted to go front to back in the game, and frankly, the pitchers were left out there. When we were younger, me being a little bit older than most of you people listening, we were left out there to pitch the game, face adversity, not to have a reliever come in, all this other crap. Now, 10 years after, 1974, there was 1,089 complete games. In 1984, there were less than half, or 632 complete games. Now, 10 years beyond 1984, in 1994, there were less than half at 255 complete games. All right, so you have half-lives going now, period, decade to decade to decade there. And then in 2004, 10 years after, there were 150 complete games. So we're talking 105 games less. In 2014, 118 complete games pitched. 2022, 35 complete games pitched. In 2023, there were only 3 complete games in the National League. Imagine that. 2024 had a grand total of 28 total complete games, the lowest in Major League Baseball history. So we have seen a ridiculous decline in starting pitchers going from front to back. And I would argue that there's a lot of weight put on the strength and conditioning coaches, the pitching coach. I think a lot of pitching coaches out there are hurting the arms of those pitchers on their staff. I don't believe they're training them right. And in fact, when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit about training and why, in my opinion, pitchers are getting injured so frequently. And it seems like everybody has a Tommy John issue. Back here in a few minutes on the Sports Circus. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC Sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at
714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100.
Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UppercutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UppercutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UppercutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door. store without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at uppercutchops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at uppercutchops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, csncoyotes.com. Folks, they've been with us since the very beginning, so check them out at csncoyotes.com. All right, a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our affiliates, including our friends over in Atlanta, listening in on WAUD. And better yet, that's WDJY. Sorry about that. We'll get to you in just a second. Thanks for waking up with us in Atlanta on WDJY 99.1 FM. Over in Auburn, Alabama, Columbus, Georgia, Montgomery, Alabama, WAUD. That is 1230 on the AM dial. That's home of the Atlanta Braves. Thanks for joining us over there, up and down the heartland, all the way out to the West Coast. Those driving between sunny Southern California and Las Vegas, listening in on Highway Country Radio 101.5 FM and 107.3 FM. That's home of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Raiders. Also, welcome into everybody up and down the West Coast, all the way up to Alaska, down to Honolulu, CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the Yankees, 49ers, and Alabama Crimson Tide. Plus, everybody listening in and watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Tidewater, Spectrum, Wild, Charter, and independent cable affiliates in select markets. Thanks for joining us there, as well as Hotel TV. Also, everybody listening in on Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, iHeart, YouTube, Stitcher, Deezer, you name it, we're there. You can't get away from us. No, I don't have a list I'm reading, folks. I've just done this so many blasted times, and I'm just go ahead and it's burnt into my head. I've literally done it thousands of times. That's how I remember this stuff. But nonetheless, we have to make sure that we thank everybody that's watching and listening, and frankly, all of those people that have been with us for years and years and years. Listen, we have an anniversary that we are celebrating pretty soon, and you'll be a part of it as well with special giveaways and stuff like that. By the way, in the first segment, Vacation Buddies offered a couple of nights stay right here in Las Vegas, in Orlando, Florida, or in Branson, Missouri. If you knew the answer to this very simple trivia question, I'm going to repeat it in case you're just tuning in right now. Which of these three structures is the tallest in Las Vegas? Is it A, the Eiffel Tower at the Hotel and Casino, the Paris Hotel and Casino, B, the Fontainebleau Hotel and Casino, or C, the Stratosphere Tower at the Strat? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with this station, but they want to give you a couple of nights right here in Vegas, Orlando, or Branson, Missouri, if you know the answer to that super, super easy trivia question. If so, again, 888-576-5777. Call now. All right. Back to baseball and pitching, because this is what really makes a game. It's not whether you can hit the ball. We already know that. Look, you could score without hitting the ball. But the reality is the pitching, in my opinion, had sharply declined from not only complete games. In 1974, there were 1,089 complete games, all the way to 2024, 28 total complete games. In fact, beyond, I think it's even less than that. However, we're just going to take some real basic numbers here. And people say, well, there's a bunch of reasons for a decline in those complete games, specialization of pitching, modern baseball features distinct roles for starting pitchers, long relievers, short relievers, including closers. I don't know about that. I mean, look, they all have their roles, but let's face it. the long relievers and short relievers typically wouldn't see the game if the starting pitcher was dealing, throwing strikes, hitting the paint, doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Basically, doing what guys like Greg Maddux or Mark Burley would do, or Quick, maybe not the case. You got 7 guys behind you, one guy in front of you, and you also are as somebody else that is supposed to field the ball when there's a shot right back up the middle. And a lot of pitchers, their mechanics are off. And why do I say that it matters what the pitching coaches are doing, what the strength and conditioning coaches are doing? Because it absolutely, unequivocally does. When you think about what they do and what they don't do, you ask yourself, why is it that they do or don't do what they do? The reality is, when you look at the pitchers and their conditioning, you say, well, they're trained a very particular way. Yes, they are. But the issue is, as we look at how they've been trained, and when I'm talking about training, I'm talking about releasing the ball, where their release point is, what their balance situation is. The balance is a really, really, really big deal. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just imagine this. You watch a baseball game and you say, why is it that that pitcher got hit in the back of the head with that comebacker? Why is it the pitcher got hit in his back? Why did the pitcher get hit in his ass? What happened? The ball was hit by the batter. The batter bounds it right back, maybe a one-hopper, back to the pitcher. And why is it hitting the pitcher rather than the pitcher grabbing it with their glove or at least trying to defend themselves? Well, part of the issue is that when these guys are trained these days, apparently somebody forgot to tell those people, those pitching coaches, that the pitcher needs to be on balance. They need to come down with their plant foot, with their first foot down as they move forward. That foot needs to be to the opposite side or equal to the middle of home plate. So their follow-through foot is parallel when they throw the ball. Why does that matter? Because when the feet are parallel, technically shoulder width apart, then the pitcher is on balance and ready to field their position because they're facing the batter. Not off to the side, they're actually facing the batter. If you look at a guy like Greg Maddux, for example, Greg Maddux mechanically was one of those almost perfect pitchers where after he would throw the ball, he would be in his position like a lot of other pitchers from back in the day. I'm just using him because he's a guy that was probably the best pitcher in the last 50 years. So this guy was ready to field the ball as soon as he threw the ball. That's why he was the 16-time Gold Glover. He was one of the only guys that would actually be in position ready to field the baseball. Mark Burley did the same exact thing, and on we go. But the reality is the training of these pitchers is paramount to their success. Now think about this. Technically, there's 8 people. There's 4 plus 1. There are 5 infielders plus a catcher, and there are 3 outfielders. Right? You have first, second, third, and short, and the pitcher. The pitcher is supposed to clog the middle. So when the pitcher is fielding their position, now you can't hit a bouncing ball right back up the middle per se because the pitcher is ready to field their position. So at worst, maybe they knock it down. The point is, the little dribbler up the middle doesn't necessarily make it through. Sometimes it goes through the pitcher's legs, whatever. The point is, when the pitcher is in fielding position after throwing their ball, then it's their job to clog the middle. So all those cheap hits that were little chopper 2 hoppers or whatever that go right back up the middle, those largely should be stopped or deflected by the pitcher in the first place. So the pitcher doesn't have just one job. They have multiple jobs out there. Now, typically, they're not the first line of defense for defense, if you know what I mean. If there's a pop-up on the infield, the pitcher needs to run out of the way and get out of the way for the third baseman, who likely is going to call everybody off, because the third baseman typically has the best glove on the infield. But ultimately, it's the pitcher's job to get out of the way. That's it, because they technically are a liability for the most part when they field it. But remember, when they're fielding their position, when they're good at pitching, when they're good at playing their position, that means they know how to stop a ground ball. And so the reality is the pitching coaches today don't put the time and emphasis on balance. And when you're putting the time and emphasis on balance, that means your pitcher is ready to pitch, ready to field as well. And so you say, well, specialization of pitching, long relievers, short relievers. Well, guess what? That could be an extra hit or two right back up the middle, putting guys in scoring position, or even letting a run or two go across, which means now maybe a long reliever or a short reliever has to come in because these things actually happen down the ball field. And that's too bad. Now, the closers, they have a role, and they've been around for a long time, and we'll see since the 1970s. And in my recollection, typically right around there. That's when you saw some prominent closers out there. And of course, the best one of all time, in my opinion, you've got guys like Bruce Sutter, who was probably the best of the best. Goose Gossage was a phenomenal closer as well. Let's go way back in the day. Now remember, Rich Gossage was a starting pitcher at some point in his career, right? And back then, even Bruce Sutter, guys did not come in they didn't come into the league to be closers. Dennis Eckersley was not a closer as he was brought up. No, Dennis Eckersley was a starting pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. Remember that. He was a starting pitcher for the Chicago Cubs, a very average starting pitcher. But when he went to the bullpen, he turned into a superstar because he had incredible control when he went to the Oakland A's. So the reality is specialization of pitchers, I don't know about that. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the designated hitters, the fewer innings pitched per start, and the increased number of pitchers and all that other nonsense. So believe me, folks, there is a lot of misnomers or a lot of, in my opinion, misinformation about pitching that's going on. I think it's tainting the public on really what's going on the pitcher's mound and in these games. Back here in a few minutes on The Circus. Don't go anywhere.
If I was your mother and you had a drug problem, I'd grab you by the ear and make you call and get help. You can be in treatment tomorrow and start to get clean in 7 days. Follow Mom's advice and call the Detox and Treatment Helpline now. Write this number down.
800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. That's 800-814-8628.
Are you or someone you love struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol and want to be set free from the chains of addiction? Then call Addiction Helpline America right now to get the help you need. From drug and alcohol addiction to dual diagnosis treatment, we provide a confidential helpline to help people like you get sober and live happy, substance-free lives.
Treatment helped me get my life back. I was so addicted, the only person I could focus on was myself and what I needed. I hit rock bottom and lost everything. Through treatment, I was able to overcome those demons and focus on my family again.
I used until I overdosed and almost died. That was the end of the road for me. After seeking treatment, I now have hope. I learned skills that help me deal with life on life's terms.
800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. 800-426-4994. That's 800-426-4994.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Investors, keep listening to learn how to get your free gold report. A currency crisis is upon us. The U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency for over 50 years, but that is changing. It's time to protect your retirement. Decades of reckless borrowing and spending have critically weakened the dollar. The U.S. has become the world's biggest debtor with over $35 trillion in debt. Plus, the dollar's become weaponized. Countries are dumping it. Investors Bettors who wait until it's too late could lose big. There is one safe haven, gold. Diversify your portfolio with a physical asset they can't take away. Call the Reagan Gold Group right now and ask for your free gold guide. Here's our number.
800-876-7041. 800-876-7041. 800-876-7041. That's 800-876-7041.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP television. Folks, make sure to check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guest, our prior guest, recorded shows, which can be found on Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, iHeart, Stitcher, YouTube, Deezer, plus all the other usual suspects. Also, check out the partners page at thesportscircus.com. Lots of great partners. One of those is the music of Jason Owens, country music star Jason Owens. Check him out at jasonowensmusic.com. Jason is an up-and-coming country star, and he's played Las Vegas, I don't know, a few hundred times or so. Big places, MGM Grand, Resort World, Old Red, and sang the national anthem at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, Hard Rock Casino, so forth. Had big shows all over the place. Anyway, check him out, jasonowensmusic.com. He is a traditional country music star. He's not country rock. He's not country pop. He is traditional country. He's got a really good fiddle player, good drummer. I got to tell you, it is really good and good fun to watch and to go and listen. A lot of people go and dance and have a great time. Check him out, jasonowensmusic.com. All right, welcome back to everybody. You know you are, TV and radio, streaming. We left off talking about the reason for the decline in complete games in baseball. And so a lot of this was centered around, well, the pitching is different. The game is different. People say that, all that kind of crap. Now, look, I'm a former ball player. I know this one. And I can tell you from my experience, there are a lot of reasons that are not being discussed. And like I talked to you about in the last segment, the pitching coaches are not teaching proper mechanics to these kids, which really changes everything. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the last segment. But the reality is they say, well, you know, there's long relievers, short relievers, including closing pitchers, the closers and whatnot. Specialization is pitching. That was one of those big deals, right? And I gave a reason why the long relievers and short relievers probably weren't needed as much. So therefore, you go from the reliance of 4 people, long reliever, short reliever, including closers, well, even 3, down to 2, maybe starting pitcher and the possibility of a closer. All right, so the reason for a decline, according to Pick Your Favorite Individual, they'll say, well, the designated hitter has changed things. Well, the introduction of the DH in the American League contributed to a higher number of complete games in that league initially, but overall the trend still points to a decline. Now, that doesn't make any sense. This is according to that search engine that rhymes with noodle. So they say, let's read that again. The introduction of the designated hitter in the American League contributed to a higher number of complete games in that league, be it the American League, initially. But the overall trend still points to a decline. Now, that doesn't make any sense because you have to think about this. Strikeouts are one thing. Strikeouts in today's game are more predicated on that launch angle garbage. Well, let's go ahead and do an uppercut swing in baseball. So let's get the ball up in the air. Okay, so that's what they say. Well, the reality is when you're doing that launch angle approach, you're increasing your strikeouts because the bat is not in the strike zone as long, or better yet, the hitting zone, as long as it should be. It's not intersecting properly. A nice level bat will go right across the hitting zone, the full hitting zone, rather than intersect in a particular point for all you geometry people out there. So the reality is the strike zone, I'm saying the strike where the bat would strike the ball, that particular strike zone is predicated on what your bat angle is. Now, the designated hitter, let's face it, it's been around for back when there was 1,089 complete games back in the day, back in the 1970s. So that's a bunch of nonsense when they say, well, it's this and this, that. Well, that's that search engine that rhymes with noodle. So I don't buy that nonsense. It has nothing to do with the designated hitter, in my opinion. Absolutely not. They say, well, in today's game, well, you've got more guys doing X, Y, and Z. You have more skilled hitters instead of a pitcher taking up a position. That may be true, but in today's time also, because of this launch angle argument, let's face it, there are almost as many strikeouts. It's just not as many home runs and power hits, let's just say, from back in the day when the pitchers were hitting, when the pitchers actually could hit. And they were taught how to do what? Swing the bat on a level plane. So that's not even happening anymore in spots 1 through 9 on the lineup. So that's why we have more strikeouts nowadays than we ever have in the past. But anyway, moving on. They say the reason for the decline in starting or in complete games is there are fewer innings per start. Well, no kidding. That's part of that nonsensical, let's bring in, we have a starter, then we have a long reliever, or a short reliever, then we have a closer. Then we have setup guys before them too. So there are 3, 4, 5 different levels before the closer actually comes in the first place. So the average number of innings pitched per starting pitcher has decreased significantly over the years. I don't think that's a good thing. Why would you take a guy out? That is their job, is to stay out there and do what they do. Face adversity, get better as the game goes on. A lot of them will either stay the same or get better as the game goes on. Sure, they're going to face the same hitters 3, maybe 4 times. That's okay, because that actually works both ways. In some cases, when a pitcher is in the middle of a 3-2 game, let's just say, maybe it's 3-2 in the 7th inning, and maybe there's a guy on base, maybe the tying run is on base. Okay, but remember, now the other hitters have already seen this guy twice. Maybe they're going on their 3rd at bat in the game with that pitcher or against that pitcher. Well, in many cases, when it's a low-scoring affair like that, when the pitcher's in there anyway, well, the pitcher's already in their heads. Now the pitcher has the hitter thinking too much. That's the problem from the hitter standpoint. And the pitcher's saying, well, I'm just going to have some fun because, number one, they may not remember everything about a particular hitter, but the person, the official scorer, and the bench coach will certainly notify the head coach, right, or the manager. So the manager will be notified by the bench coach, and in some cases, the pitching coach will just simply notify the bench coach to tell the manager, this is what's going on. Maybe this guy saw a 2-1 slider and he drove it into right field for a base hit or something like that. So maybe if you get to 2-1, maybe since a lot of the pitchers are actually called by the dugout from the manager, they relay it into the catcher, in case you don't know that. Then the catcher tells the pitcher what to throw. Most pitchers don't call their own games. And so maybe they're looking at that and say, you know what, maybe we're going to throw a 2-1 splitty, or we're going to throw a 2-1 fastball up and in, because that hitter last time maybe saw a curveball or something and dumped that out into right field or something to that effect. So there's a lot going on in this. There are more than one brain that's in this discussion. There's a lot more than one brain in this discussion. And so, again, baseball is 95% psychological, 5% execution. But you still have to execute at the very pinnacle of performance. Because, of course, one small move, and there you go. The ball goes out of the yard. It's hit 450 foot. So the reality is there is a lot going on, and that's why I think it's actually better to leave those pitchers in there, let them face a little adversity. But remember, those guys have also done what? They've already gotten into the heads of the other hitters, and now you've got the other hitters talking to one another, and now everybody's confused. So for one person getting confused, then they voice it. Now 2 to 3 people are confused. Now maybe the rest of the batting lineup is confused. Maybe one guy has an answer for the pitcher, but that one guy hits very differently than everybody else. And so that's the exception. Look, you're not going to be perfect against everybody. But the reality is, if you're getting most of these guys out, which you're going to anyway, that's why you're in the game, well, it just turns into gigantic mind games with the hitters. That's why you got to leave these guys out there. Somebody asked me earlier today, they said, how come you're not coaching in baseball? I said, I'm not coaching in baseball because my expectations are way too high. I want everybody to perform at their absolute best, and I want to know why they're not if they're not. And I don't care whether it's Little League or high school ball or Legion ball or whatever the heck it is. I want the best out of everybody. That's it. And so I would be too difficult to play for, I believe, as a coach. And there are kids that I've helped and they've done well, and other kids I've given some instruction to, and it just went in one ear and right out the other. I don't do well with that. So I expect a lot. And I want my players to give their all. And the same way when Bobby Knight was coaching over at Army, he coached Mike Krzyzewski. He wanted top performance from his players. And what did Mike Krzyzewski do to go on to be the best basketball coach in the history of college basketball, right? And he had great coaching in front of him when he was a player. So the reality is how Bobby Knight coached, and people said, well, he was an angry guy and this, that, and the other at Indiana. Maybe he was, but he's a guy that expected a lot out of his players. And I can appreciate guys like him. I've had coaches like that when I was a kid. They're very difficult to play for. But the fulfillment factor at the end of it is great. You don't celebrate during the game. You celebrate after the game is already won. That's it. Otherwise, there's no reason to celebrate anything. Good coaching will drive its players with that mentality. They will let them face adversity. They'll let them get out there and do what they've got to do and get better. And if they don't get better, if it just gets worse, well, guess what? At some point, we're going to have to take you out. All right, back here in a few to wrap it up on the Sports Circus in the final segment. Don't go anywhere.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't, and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with a free call. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. That's 800-298-3173.
Owning great property is almost impossible these days. At least, that's what people keep saying. They don't know about National Premier Properties. Do you have $350 or a credit card? You can own a great piece of property in a resort community. National Premier Properties has over 51 years of experience helping people just like you purchase amazing properties across the U.S. and in Mexico, Canada, the Bahamas. It takes less than 5 minutes to turn your dream into reality. Visit nationalpremierproperties.com and make it happen now.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP television. Folks, make sure you check out the sportscircus.com's store. Yes, there's a store tab right across the top of the page. And of course, you can pick up your hats, hoodies, t-shirts, sweatpants, regular pants, jackets, mouse pads, coffee mug, travel mugs, you name it, they're there. Even pillows, that's right, with the clever Sports Circus logo on them. Check out the Sports Circus store at thesportscircus.com. Lots of great items there. A shameless plug, of course, for the Sports Circus. All right, and welcome back to everybody listening in on all your affiliates, all of our affiliates, that is, TV and radio and streaming and so forth. Thanks for joining us everywhere, even on Chicago Food Favorites. By the way, folks, check that out. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. A fun group talking about your favorite foods, your favorite restaurants, favorite recipes. Make some friends, have some fun. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. All right, now back to the baseball discussion. Now, we started out the top of the show today with the decline in complete games in baseball. And so from 1,089 in 1974 all the way down to 28 in 2024. So in 50 years, we've seen a decline of almost 0 games. We'll say what? Not 0, but a very, very small amount of games. And they say, well, you know, the game has changed and so forth. I don't really think the game has changed. I really don't. It really hasn't changed. It's just who wants it to change. So let's go back to, well, let's start at 1974. So we look at 1974 and we say, well, geez, we have, actually, I want to go further back. Yeah, let's just go to 1974 because that's where our reference point starts. So we go back to our National League and American League leaders in complete games. The American League had Ferguson Jenkins. Everybody knows him as being a Chicago Cub. But Fergie Jenkins pitched with the Texas Rangers back in 1974. That's right. In case you didn't know, now you know. Well, it happens that he had 29 complete games in 1974. 29. Over in the National League, it was Phil Negro. He had 18 complete games. Let's go to 1975. In the American League, Catfish Hunter for the New York Yankees had 30 complete games. Both of those guys, Jenkins and Catfish Hunter, even go the year before, the 2 years previous, Gaylord Perry. He had 29 complete games in both of his years in 1972 and 1973. And then Catfish Hunter with 30 in 1975. Over in the National League, it was Andy Messersmith with 19 complete games. Why do I talk about this in the American League? Well, guess what? Guys like Hunter and Jenkins and Perry, they had more complete games in one season than Major League Baseball in its entirety in 2024. You see where we're going with this, folks? It's crazy. So you look at Mark Fidrich in the American League, 1976, he had 24 complete games. Randy Jones of the San Diego Padres had 25 complete games. Now, you start seeing a decline as we go down to, let's just say 1980, it kind of dropped a little bit. So let's go to 1980. 1970, let's make sure we give our just due. Phil Niekro in 77, 78, 79 had 20, 22, and 23 complete games for the Atlanta Braves. Now, over in the American League, it was Jim Palmer and Nolan Ryan in 1977 with 22 complete games. Mike Caldwell with the Milwaukee Brewers, because, yes, the Brewers were in the American League in 1978. He had 23 complete games, and Dennis Martinez had 18 for the Baltimore Orioles. And in 1980, we're starting to see kind of a shift. Now, Rick Langford in the American League had 28 for the Oakland Athletics. Steve Rogers had 14 in the National League. That led the National League. So there's a drop for a couple of years. But in 1982, it picked back up in the National League. The American League, of course, it was Langford in 80 and 81 with 28 complete games, then 18 complete games in 81. Dave Stieb with the Toronto Blue Jays had 19 in 1982. Steve Carlton, you may remember him, the great lefty, had 19 complete games in 1982 for the Philadelphia Phillies. Mario Soto for the Cincinnati Reds in 82 and 83 had 18 and 13. Ron Guidry, the great Ron Guidry, the lefty, had 21 complete games in 1983. Charlie Huff, the knuckleballer, had 17 complete games. Now, 1985, it was Bert Blyleven with 24, and he played for a couple teams back then, the Angels and whatnot. And so Dwight Gooden had 16 in the National League, and then Fernando Valenzuela had 20 in 1986. Tom Candiotti had 17. And then there was a bigger drop-off in the National League that went down to 12 with Rick Russell and Fernando Valenzuela each having 12. Roger Clemens had 18 in the American League. Roger Clemens in 1988, the next year, had 14, so he even dropped 4. Dave Stewart, he had 14 as well. And that is really the point, I should say, 1988 is when things really changed. Brett Saberhagen in 89 had 12. Tim Belcher and Bruce Hurst each had 10 in the National League. And at 1990, Ramon Martinez for the Dodgers had 12. Jack Morris and Dave Stewart had 11. And started going down into single digits shortly thereafter. We'll just say through the 90s. And as we get into 2000, so let's just make sure we give our people some love here, because I mentioned Greg Maddux before. Greg Maddux led the National League in complete games in 93, 94, 95. And it was Terry Mulholland in 1992 with 12. Tom Glavine and Dennis Martinez in 1991. Now, in the American League, it was Black Jack McDowell, who's been with us here on the Sports Circus for a while. Jack had led the American League in complete games with 15 in 1991. In 1992, he had 13, led the American League. Chuck Finley for the Angels, a very good lefty. Chuck Finley in 1983. The big unit, Randy Johnson, in 1994 with 9 complete games. So this is where your drop-off starts. So we have from 94 in the American League, it goes down into single digits. In 90, we'll say 96 or single digits. Then they had a few years of double digits again with Pedro Martinez, Kurt Schilling, and the big unit Randy Johnson, because he went into the National League, and that was with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then again, he also, for 3 years in a row, 2 years, Randy Johnson was there at the top of the game. And then he had skipped a year with Kurt Schilling, and then he had 8 more complete games in 2002. My point is, it dropped off in about, we'll say 2000. And then we're all the way down into single digits. And just even in the last handful of years, it's been really bad in the grand scheme of things. We haven't seen a whole hell of a lot of complete games. And you ask, why is it that you haven't seen the complete games in the first place? Well, it goes back to this so-called method of playing the percentages with this, that, and the other. I have to tell you, folks, it is not what they say it is, in my opinion. I don't believe that the strategy of using all these pitchers over and over, I really don't think it works, and especially when you're opening a game with a closer. I don't even understand that one. I mean, let's face it, in 2024, Max Fried and Christopher Sanchez from the Atlanta Braves, Max Fried, Christopher Sanchez from Philadelphia, they each had 2 complete games, and that led the National League. Kevin Gossman had 2 in the American League, and that led the American League. That's how ridiculous this has gotten. And frankly, the last pitcher to throw even more than 5 was Sandy Alcantara. He had 6 in 2022. That's right. American League, let's go back. 2, these are the leaders. Gossman with 2. Lyles with 3. And we're going backwards, 24 to 23, 22. Valdez with 3. Garrett Cole and Sean Manaea each had 2. Garrett Cole had 2. Shane Bieber and Lucas Giolito had 3. Jose Berrios, Carlos Carrasco, Corey Kluber, and James Paxton each had 2 in 2018. You see where we're going with this, folks. The problem is that we're not getting the longevity out of these pitchers, and they're paying them so much money. The TV contracts have blown everything completely out of proportion, where it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's take Max Fried. Max Fried signs a deal with a whole bunch of money, I don't know, $188 million or $181 million, something to that effect. And Max Fried's going 5-6 innings a game. Is that what the game has turned itself into? Is that really what the game is now? I don't even know anymore. We don't even know what a complete game is for the most part. And when we talk pitching strategy now, it's like, okay, well, we've got a pitcher that's going to go 5 1/3. Then we've got a reliever that's going to go an inning. Another guy's going to go an inning. Another guy's going to go an inning, a setup guy. Then we're going to have a closer. So now we've got 5-6 pitchers into a game, which I don't know. I mean, you want to talk about burning arms. And now you've got guys that are literally coming in and making, I don't know, $10,000, $50,000 a pitch, maybe even more than that, maybe even $100,000 a pitch. That's the conversion. When you think about how frequently they're used, it just doesn't make a bunch of sense. And so the TV dollars have really made things, I guess it's really thrown everything out of whack. It really has. And so your last really good pitcher in the American League that really went the distance and really earned his money, in my opinion, was Roy Halladay. And that's 2007, 2008, 2009. He pitched 7 complete games, 9 complete games, 9 complete games. So those are solid years for a pitcher. Justin Verlander had 6, a handful of years later, and that was supposed to be great. I don't know about that. James Shields had 11. That's the last guy in the last, well, let's put it this way, since the turn of the century, he's had the most out of anybody. And that is 11 in 2011. So where has the game gone? That's what I want to leave you with. Where's the game gone? Where is the value of a starting pitcher and the alleged pitching staff? You ask yourself, what is the pitching coach doing? What are the analytics doing? And how are these guys being conditioned? Are they being conditioned to just go 5 innings? Well, it sure seems that way. And again, think about fielding their positions. You'd get more outs if the pitchers were on balance rather than off balance, because then they would be able to field their position rather than falling off the hill. If you're a righty, you're falling off to the right side. Lefty, you're falling off to the left side. And you can't field your position. There's a lot going on here, folks. This is a very lengthy conversation, I suppose, that maybe there's a whole week series on something like this with pick your favorite pitcher. But anyway, we're out of time here on the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, and we'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Owning great property is almost impossible these days. At least, that's what people keep saying. They don't know about National Premier Properties. Do you have $350 or a credit card? You can own a great piece of property in a resort community. National Premier Properties has over 51 years of experience helping people just like you purchase amazing properties across the U.S. and in Mexico, Canada, the Bahamas. It takes less than 5 minutes to turn your dream into reality. Visit nationalpremierproperties.com and make it happen now.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.